Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Junia Doan's The Spark. I'm Junia Doan, and thank you for joining us. My guest today is Seth Goldstein, a two-time Tony Award-winning multi-platform producer and co-founding partner of Hugo 6. Welcome, Seth. So tell us what Hugo 6 is. It's a mystifying title.
Sure. So Hugo 6 is an entertainment production company. We are largely focused on creating new large-scale Broadway musicals, although we do work in other media verticals, some television, some film. It's a partnership between myself and a producer named Isaac Hurwitz. Hugo 6 is really an amalgam of our names. That's how we landed on that. But our primary day-to-day activities focus around creating original musicals for Broadway and ultimately distribution around the world.
So how did you get to the point where you could confidently start a company that does this kind of thing?
I have a lot of optimism and perseverance, and I think those are two of the key ingredients to becoming a producer. You know, the creative producing world is very much like the founder of a startup. Right? You have a vision, you have to enroll people in that vision, whether they are the talent or the financiers or the distribution channels. And over the years, as originally an actor, then a director, then an arts administrator, and now as a commercial theater producer, I have built both skills and networks in the various aspects of the work that's required to bring something from concept to full fruition. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's challenging always. There are so many moving parts, but that's part of why I'm so attracted to doing the things I do and how I feel so fortunate to be doing them, because it really allows us to bring new ideas to life, both on behalf of the incredibly talented and inspired artists that we work with and the audiences that we are trying to uplift and similarly inspire.
So I saw the Lehman trilogy at the Armory, and I was stunned just by the concept and the conversation of the lines. Tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Sure. That was an extraordinary play, an adaptation originally of an Italian play written in verse that our colleagues at the Royal National Theatre in London ultimately developed into an English language play. Sam Mendes, the director of that project, had a vision for how to bring it to life. And what I thought was remarkable about the play, the Lehman Trilogy, is that while it is ostensibly about the overtaking of our economy and social lives by an outsized level of commercial greed, driven ultimately by the investment banking community, which I have a great respect for, but this is the angle that the playwright was taking. The story is the arrival of the first Lehman brother in the United States, all the way through the collapse of the investment bank, and how both their relationships within their family and in the broader economic sense, how the rise of investment banking has affected all of us globally. What was amazing is that they were able to find such a human way to tell the story. And it is by and large 3 actors on stage playing many different roles inside a an extraordinary and breathtaking story. I just thought it was gorgeous, and I was so fortunate to be involved in that case, not as a creative producer, but as a financing producer.
So that brings to mind culture, because certainly the culture changed around them and the family interacted with that, or the remains of the family, or whoever was running it at the time.
That's
But
right.
is the same true in the field you're in, which is production of new musicals or theater? And that there are fads, perhaps, or different values coming forward at different times?
I think good storytellers, good producers are always looking to create new levels of empathy, inspiration, interrogation, and they approach different stories from many different angles. So, one of the things that I find so amazing about the theater experience is that not only do some of the best in class writers explore the whole breadth of the human experience in ways that are often exciting and unexpected, but also that we in the audience agree to forget about the fact that we're literally sitting in a theater. We can see the boundaries of the story through the frame of the stage. We know that there are actors in front of us, but for some reason our brain is able to kind of let go of all of that and invest in the story and the characters and be affected by it, even though there's so much artifice. I think that's an amazing aspect of humanity. There's a statistic that within 7 minutes, the heartbeats of an audience will all align, and I just think that it's a beautiful mystery about how we are alive and what it's like to be a human in community with other people.
Did I understand you? Within 7 minutes, the heartbeats of the audience are aligned?
It's one of the fun things about standing in the back of the theater. You know what's coming. You've seen the play many times. You're aware of the twists and the turns, the moments where people may gasp or cry or laugh or whatever it is. And you can hear the audience. They all come in, everybody comes in with whatever they're carrying in from their day, concerns about a babysitter, the travel to the theater, the dinner they just had, whatever it is. But you can hear the breathing of the audience change, and you can see everybody begin to settle in. One of the projects we're involved with right now is the most recent Tony Award winning musical is Maybe Happy Ending, and we are very proudly financing partners on that project. And that is a story that the elevator pitch is very bizarre. But when audiences come in, you can see them physically, almost in unison, have the same experience where first they're like, what is this? And then they lean forward and then they understand it. And then you see people begin to lean into their partners, their dates for the evening, and you can hear them respond at the same time. That is an incredible gift to a producer to know that you've really been able to affect 1,200, 1,300 people at a time with this incredible story.
Which says to me that the future, just forget AI and all the, how we're techno people, that the desire to amalgamate through experience in a group is with us, and therefore they will find a way to do that one way or
I
another.
agree. I
And
agree. I think there are incredible, aspects of the AI experience, the virtual worlds, being able to explore Antarctica from your living room with a VR goggles. All of those things have value. But for me, I see an increased need from audiences to be in community with each other, to actually share a space and the same air. And the idea that humans are standing on the stage 100 feet away from you, 20 feet away from you, whatever it is, and telling a story has, I think, become even more potent and valuable in a time where we're spending much more time on screens.
so I had heard, well, I saw Wicked many a year ago, and I now have a granddaughter, and I was thinking of taking her, and I said, well, I better see it again.
Sure.
See, what I remember is, well, it went from, well, towards a cynical experience. So I decided not for her.
Okay.
And then a friend of mine said, well, in long running musicals, I don't know about theater, they change, they edit annually somewhat to be in sync or countersync with the culture. Do you have a comment on that? Is that so?
That's not my experience of it. My experience of in this community and colleagues of mine who produce Wicked and other long running musicals, I think they are sometimes adapted for the regional audience, or
When
so
it's
as an example, there are cultural differences between Americans and Asian audiences. And so there may be some editing or reframing of certain things to make sure that they conform to norms in societies around the world. Because in our greatest levels of success, we end up franchising these musicals, these stories globally. But my impression is that the production on Broadway, as an example of Wicked, is to the word the same as it was on day one. I do think over time, because to your point, the culture changes over time, that audiences see things in the original material differently than they have
differently.
before. I had that experience yesterday. I saw the wonderful 96-year-old actress June Squibb in a play that I don't want to give too much of the story away, except to say that it involves the notion of humanoid robots who become companions. And when the play was originally written, whatever it was, 10, 15 years ago, I think that had a level of exoticism. And maybe the audience's focus, what they were talking about at dinner afterwards, might have been about, could you imagine a world where that would happen? And now we're living in the world where those types of things happen. And I think, therefore, my experience with the art was different than the audience's 10 years ago.
Oh, interesting comment. Well, for a while, edgy. Everybody was talking to me about edgy. I was saying, what's interesting about edgy? Edgy is just counter culture, you know.
Sure.
What point is? I haven't heard the word lately. So, what replaces if edgy is out? What's in?
I think audiences in the live space are looking for something textured, detailed. Um, there's nothing wrong with a broad and light situation comedy on television that creates great joy for a lot of people. But when they seek a theatrical experience, I think generally audiences are looking for something that feels like it's going to resonate in their heart. And edgy has a place in that world, but I think, to your point, can sometimes feel off-putting. Um, and I think if you see the work that people tend to patronize, it often has a very specific point of view, like an idiosyncratic author's voice. It's a story that either they have never encountered before or is told in a way they've never seen before. I think maybe Happy Ending is a good example of that. That's a musical that's really about a meditation on love and mortality, not terrifically new creative territory, but it's told in such an astonishingly fresh, different, unexpected way that I think that's why it's resonating for audiences. So, as I said, I think edgy has a place, but I don't know that the creators are starting from that place of thinking, what can I write that's edgy? I think they're writing in response to whatever they, on a personal level, feel like they need to express or explore.
Do you think writers are pessimistic?
I don't think writers in the theater business are pessimistic because it's so challenging. It takes so many years to bring a new work to life that I think at their heart, they're all optimists. But I think, like all artists, writers have something to say, and they're responding to the realities of the world around them or their own personal experiences, and they're bringing all of those things into the stories that they're telling.
What did you need to learn? Who are you differently now than you were when you started all this? What did you need to learn?
I hope to be learning every day. I don't think it's possible to learn everything, but I do think the skills that were unique to my specific business had involved becoming clearer and more focused in both how I speak to artists in a rehearsal studio, How do we explore what we're trying to accomplish here dramaturgically? How do we make this feel more authentic? I know what you're going for. I'm standing in for the audience. I'm unclear about that. How do I help ask the right questions to bring more clarity to what you are trying to present to a broad audience? And the counterbalance, balancing mindset of that also is, what are the commercial imperatives? Can I learn from my financing partners, from my distribution partners, to build the box in a way that will sustain, where we can, some of these Broadway musicals, we have 240 something people on payroll. How do we build businesses where those people have an opportunity to raise their families on the backs of these startups that we're launching? And so I really had to learn from other industries. I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books about startups in general, not specifically in the arts. And I spend a lot of time focused on organizational management and philosophy. How do you build a culture in a business? Because it's hard, it's repetitive. Once you get something on stage, to maintain the level of quality that's required at the absolute highest level of performance and production. And like most businesses, a lot of it comes down to the culture that the leadership team can build. And so I've had to learn a lot about how to motivate organizations and keep everybody pointing toward the same North Star.
What is that culture like? What kind of a culture did you want to build?
Well, I always endeavored to build a culture where people feel like they know where they stand, where they're getting clear, open communication, where they can express the things that are on their mind at any time and be treated respectfully and equitably. It's a business, and it needs there. We have 17 contracts from 14 different unions on Broadway, and the terms in each of those agreements don't always align. And so it's left up to the management and operations teams to try to build a cohesive company out of these disparate skill sets and personalities. So from our perspective, we think that the number one key to success is clear and open communication on a consistent basis. You may not like what you hear, you may be inspired by what you hear, but you're always going to hear, essentially an open poker kind of perspective. We're always going to be straightforward about what we're trying to accomplish, what it's going to take, and what the expectations of each other, including ourselves, will be in the executing of the business plan.
What is the role of inspiration or intuition in choosing subject material?
Oh, I do think that it plays an incredibly large role. Some of that is years and years of watching shows, experiencing other artists' work, and thinking, "Oh, that speaks to me. This doesn't. How do I refine my aesthetic sensibility?" But in truth, for me, a lot of it also comes from the creator, whether that's a director-driven project or very often a writer-driven project. I am looking for writers who are going to surprise me. And in that surprise, I will often be inspired. And I'll say, I'm not exactly sure how you're going to pull off what you want to pull off, but I am so, you have sparked such a strong interest that I am willing to try to create a space and a foundation for you to be as successful as possible. And I very much see my role often as essentially blocking and tackling for the key creators to see if we can really bring their vision to life.
Are you suggesting that a writer also has to be a salesperson and explain their material?
I think 9.8 times out of 10, that's the case, right? A writer has to enroll other people in order to bring their vision to life, whether that's because they need, and often all of these things, financing, a theater, a director who can help them, evince what they've written on the page into something that is, stageable, or a producer who is going to say, I am picking and choosing among 3 or 4 different projects that I am going to dedicate years of my life to, I think that writer has a better chance of inspiring me to put all of my energies into their show if they are a good salesperson in terms of expressing their vision for the show.
So I've noticed musicals get more and more complicated. They go outside or they have television on the
Yes.
stage, which drives up the price. I'm embarrassed to tell you what I paid for a ticket. Uh, Good for you, but I mean, if you think about young people or not so young people wanting to go, is there a role for that intermediate? Maybe it was off Broadway or off Broadway, where you could do a simpler version before it gets expensed up, so to speak, or is that day gone?
No, I don't think that day is gone. And you're asking an excellent question that has several components to it. First of all, there are theater companies around the country who are doing amazing work in every community, and they are organizations that deserve everybody's patronage and their support. Um, well, in the work in New York, I will say the top ticket price often is what gets the press, but you can see pretty much any Broadway show for $40. You may not sit in the front, you're going to sit toward the back, just like on an airplane. There's cheaper and more expensive seats depending on where you choose to spend your money. But I think it gets lost in some of the eye-popping numbers that that Broadway is still accessible and that there is a price for everybody. In respect of those eye-popping numbers, I will say this. What I think the Broadway community is trying to grapple with is that when an audience member buys a ticket directly from the production, and every production has one official ticketing agency. When you buy a ticket from that production, the money is split between the people who are literally making the production and the artists who created it. What we find happens is that when a show becomes popular, secondary ticket markets like StubHub or Vivid Seats end up buying big allocations of tickets and then reselling them at 3 or 4 times the price. So when you hear about Hamilton tickets selling for $10,000, that money is not going back to the creative people. That money is going to essentially a ticket broker who is playing an arbitrage game. They're buying the ticket for $400 or $500 and they're selling it for $10,000, and they are keeping the balance. And so over the last several years, the Broadway producers have become more aggressive in pricing their top ticket price because we know there is a population that is paying those high prices. It's not out of greed so much as it is out of making sure that the money that people are expending are going back to the artists, the company, the producers, the investors who built the business so that we can sustain and make new work. It is a complicated challenge that we're always wrestling with.
What are you good at and what do you supplement in other people?
I think I have 2 core talents. I think I have a very good eye for talent and what an audience will respond to. And I think that I have a skill in finding insight between sometimes disparate ideas and enrolling people in my conclusion from that insight. Look, here's a crazy idea, and this is an artist that you wouldn't think would be a right match, but here's why I believe we can make something special together. And I feel like my track record shows that I can not only enroll people, but really engage a large community in those insights. Where I really rely on my business partners, it's things like, there's a certain level of dramaturgical expertise that's required to really figure out, okay, we're not achieving what we need to achieve in this scene. And as an example, my business partner, his name is Isaac Hurwitz, has a particular specialty in that he's really good at zeroing in on exactly the reason why something is working or not working and helping to mold the creative vision in order to make that moment land or make that larger story appeal. So I definitely lean on him, and we have incredible partners who focus on the day-to-day operational aspects of the business in terms of making sure that the books are kept in order, that the contracts are being observed, that we're on a very basic level really caring for the community of artists and technicians and staff that are part of our team. I focus very much on the big vision pieces, and I rely on those partners to fill in the more detailed oriented aspects of operating the business on a day-to-day basis.
Who's the decider?
I'm the decider. So my business partner and I together, we are the deciders ultimately. And sometimes we will have co-lead producers. And so oftentimes we will have to have consensus amongst the leaders of the business. It's essentially when you have co-leads, it's like having two different CEOs that have to come to consensus so that we have a clear position when we go back out to our partners and our vendors, et cetera. But at the end of the day, our role is essentially to be the CEO of a startup, and then in success to franchise that startup globally. And unlike the film and television worlds, where the conclusion of that process is often a sale. You make a TV show, you sell it to or many distributors, and now you move on to your next project because the distributors are taking that filmed content and exploiting it. For us, we have to make the donuts every day. Right. So in success, when we have 10 or 11 productions of the same show worldwide, people have to show up to the theater and make that happen. And so it becomes a very complicated and challenging process, but one that is also very enriching and exciting. It's why musical theater is the ultimate collaborative platform for creating new work.
Thank you, Seth. So one of the joys I read into or hear into this is the satisfaction of creativity, win or lose in the financial sense, and the importance of inspiration, but of technical depth. And like much of life, it's an experiment, but you gain experience, which makes it easier. So thank you. And I was really taken by how audiences settle into one body. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Seth. And please go out and do something kind for someone you know and someone you don't know every day and continue it forward. Thank you. See you next time.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadonsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadonthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.